Hey, not much, man. Thanks for having me.
Um, I brought him here because our next three teams are the Steelers, Patriots, and Saints. Now, I'm a little confused. I don't know what he's like a fan of, but I brought him here anyways. Maybe he can help us sort that out. So yeah, sorry for last week's hiatus. I was sick, couldn't really do it, but we're here anyways. So let's dive in. We are going to start with Pittsburgh because why not? Um, so Pittsburgh, how would you view last season? How was that? Like it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, you had high hopes that some magic was going to happen with it being Ben's last year, but we made the playoffs. He set some records on his way out, um, and his last home game was really like something special to watch. So, and we got to go out beating the Ravens. So,
Yeah. I decided I'd be salty anyways and wear my Lamar shirt. Um, so yeah, not quite where most people would expect the Steelers to be, especially bringing on the running back need that was like glaring. But they really waited to address some other needs. So let's talk about what their needs are going to be walking into this offseason. I don't think I have to tell you that quarterback is going to be probably the biggest need.
What are you talking about? We got Mason Rudolph.
and what I specifically wrote was Ben's gone. Duh, probably should have happened a couple years ago and probably should have brought somebody else in. Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins are okay, but they're both project quarterbacks. They're not just plug them and they're ready to go and we got it. What are your thoughts on this, being particularly a Pittsburgh fan watching for a lot of years?
I mean, if you go on Twitter right now, like Mason Rudolph is just constantly trending of people just crapping on him. I'm not in that boat. He hasn't impressed me a lot, but I don't know. He hasn't been awful. In the times that he's gotten like good preparation and things, he's done well. The last game that he played was, I think, week 17 of this prior season to this past one, against Cincinnati. He played really well that game. Or no, maybe it was Cleveland. One of those. But that year that Ben was out, that it was kind of between him and Duck Hodges, Mason was playing well until that game against Baltimore where he got knocked out. Very scary moment, seeing him laying there unconscious like that. But ever since that, I think like he just didn't quite shake that off that season. So, I'm interested to see what he does in a situation where he knows he has a legitimate chance to compete for a job. I mean, the last couple of years, obviously, you're not going to beat out Ben Roethlisberger for the starting job in Pittsburgh. So, I think maybe lighting a little fire under him, getting him in some like legitimate competition. Maybe we'll see something we haven't seen yet, but I'm just interested to see how he does. So I'm not totally out on him yet. And with Dwayne Haskins, again, it's just I haven't really seen a lot from him. So I'm not really one to judge at this point. I know Tomlin likes him. Tomlin thinks he has a high ceiling. Ben even was giving him some praise last year. I know Ben was, I forget what the quote was. During preseason, Ben said something like, Dwayne could throw a football through a car wash and it wouldn't get wet. So, high praise from a guy like Roethlisberger. So we'll see what he can do. But I absolutely think, you got to bring in some other quarterbacks because, you need some competition there when you're trying to fill the shoes of a guy like Big Ben.
No. I decided to look it up. I actually didn't know Mason's like starting stats to come off of it. As a rookie, he went 5-3. I mean, as a rookie, that's pretty good. And then went 0-1 in 2020, and then tied with the Lions this year. Like, not a lot of sample size. You're right, but in the short period of time we got, 5-3 is not bad. That's kind of better than most starters.
Yeah.
So,
and like I'm saying, after that game against Baltimore, the year that he actually got some significant starting time, like he never really quite recovered from that. But then once you saw him get some time later, he looked okay, but like,
yeah,
I want to see what he does with an actual chance to compete.
I agree. So the second biggest need, which could almost be more than the first, the O-line is really bad.
Yeah, we arguably, maybe even statistically, had the worst offensive line in the league this year.
Yep.
And like you and I were talking about before, just, we're just a couple years removed from Pittsburgh having one of the best offensive lines in the league. But, you go into this season, you don't have Pouncey anymore. You don't have Villanueva anymore. You don't have DeCastro anymore. You're out. Ramon Foster's been gone. Marcus Gilbert's been gone. Like that whole all-star offensive line from a couple years ago. And you're basically, you're running behind a completely, they brought in some veterans like Trey Turner, but for the most part, you got a bunch of guys with no experience up front. So.
Yeah. I kind of hit it. I kind of hit it with they didn't have to, and I'm not knocking the Steelers. They didn't have to invest in an O-line, which is what you're saying. You're absolutely right. They didn't have to. They have one of the best O-lines ever. I think it was just all the retirements back to back that just killed them. And
I mean they did draft last year O-line. I mean they had Kendrick Green and Dan Moore, and to their credit, both of them got some starting time, but it's still just. Rookies, they're young, they're inexperienced. They just didn't have a lot of veteran leadership on the O-line this year.
No, and that kind of showed throughout the season. Here's another one that I know you're probably going to agree with, and it took me a minute to really think of who the cornerbacks were for the Steelers besides Joe Hayden, and then I realized, it's kind of just Joe Hayden. There's just everyone's young. Everyone in that room is young and unproven. Like they haven't had enough experience, I guess. Like Joe Hayden feels like the number one option. Duh. He's been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean
the Browns.
Cam Sutton is very good. I will say that. Cam Sutton has been pretty solid. And they have some good guys coming up. Akello Witherspoon showed a lot of promise towards the end of the season. They have some good guys, but definitely could bring in some more.
Okay.
Because I'm not even sure Joe Hayden's going to be back this year.
Is it a contract year for him? Is it just you're all too old? Why?
Yeah, he's a free agent this year. And as of right now, there hasn't been a lot of indication from Pittsburgh that they'll bring him back. It seems like he wants to come back, and I know, Steelers fans love him, so I wouldn't mind seeing him back.
Yeah, I had to read that too. His whole career, post Browns, was insane. Because with the Browns, he's
done great in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't know if that's credit to the D coordinator. I don't know if he was just I don't want to be that guy. But I like him. I do. I think he's got some grit, and what he lacks.
I remember
size and power. He's just smart.
Yeah, I forget how many years he was in Cleveland. But I remember the first year he came to Pittsburgh was the first time he ever won consecutive games.
That's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about the inside offensive line before the show. Obviously, they need a better center. Their guards. Kendrick Green, I forgot Kendrick Green moved to center. But not massively helpful.
Kendrick, and it was a shame that he wore number 53 because you see him on the field, it's Pouncey, and then he's not Pouncey, but he was on and off, hot and cold throughout the season. Definitely needs to improve if he's going to stay at center. I think he could play anywhere else on the line and he'd probably be decent, but I know this past it's almost as soon as the offseason started for Pittsburgh, he posted a picture on Instagram of himself training with Marquise Pouncey. So he's getting some good mentorship this offseason. Okay. So we'll see if he can make something happen. But I think that it's definitely an area that there's probably going to be some competition for the center position in training camp this year.
Yeah, as there should be. Next one is linebacker. I don't think I have to tell you that TJ Watt is one of the most incredible linebackers I've ever watched.
Really? What?
But
what?
To the detriment of my team, yes. But what about Joe Shobert? What about Devin Bush? Are they long-term solutions?
So Joe Shobert has been pretty solid. The thing with him is though, he hasn't been a huge contributor, and if the Steelers would decide to let him go, they would save $8 million on their salary cap this year. So there's a lot of talk in the Pittsburgh fan base of let's get rid of Shobert and have some money to spend.
Yeah.
As far as Devin Bush, he was coming off of his injury. He had a season-ending injury in week 1 of 2020, so he didn't play at all last year. He's coming off of that. He kind of had a slow year. There was a lot of talk in the fan base of like, what's going on with Devin Bush? Is he not as good as we thought he was? But what it's giving a lot of people hope now is we now have Brian Flores as our linebackers coach.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think if anyone can turn Devin Bush's trajectory around, it'd be Flores. I'm really excited to see what he does with our front seven.
I agree. He's a good coach. It's unfortunate he didn't get a head coaching position. We've talked about this in Jock Talk quite a bit as to why that's not okay. But I think
I'm glad he's in Pittsburgh. I'll say that.
Yeah,
much.
I was going to say maybe he has a chance to prove everybody wrong in Pittsburgh.
I think he and Tomlin are a good fit.
I agree. The last one, I had to put it in there. You might disagree with me, and that's okay because you probably know much more than I do about it. But okay, so Juju's going to be a free agent. It looks like he wants to go to the Chiefs, from what I was reading a little bit. Like, I don't think he wants to stay.
He's expressed interest in staying in Pittsburgh, but he is looking to test the market. I know he's talked about the Chiefs. He's expressed interest in playing with Dak. He said something about he was down in Dallas for something recently. I forget what exactly it was, but he was saying something about like Dak's a guy he'd love to play with. He was at the AT&T Stadium. Was like, I'd love to play in a facility like this. I actually saw some talk this morning about the possibility of him going to the Patriots on kind of a 1-year prove-it deal coming off of his injury. He's a guy. I love Juju. I'd love to see him in Pittsburgh, but I'll be a fan of him wherever. He's just a good dude.
He is.
I got to meet him after a game a couple years ago.
Yeah. And I know
my buddy
talked
John
about
and
it before.
Yeah. My buddy John and I went to a Thursday night game, and after this sidetrack, we were, walking out of the stadium, kind of waiting for Ubers to become available, and we saw a bunch of people crowded around this like gated parking lot. So we went over, like, what's going on over here? And Roosevelt Nix, who was like Pro Bowl fullback at the time, was there just talking to people, signing autographs. So he left, and everybody kind of like filed away. We're like, well, let's hang around, see what happens. This like shuttle bus comes up, and Juju gets off of it, and just like, he was with a bunch of guys, and like they were trying to get him to leave because it was like 1 a.m. He's like, no, I'm gonna go sign stuff. So he came over and was like talking to everybody and signed a terrible towel that I had. It was really cool.
That's cool. I know he's done a lot of like charity work just because, like, not because he like has to, but he just does a lot of cool stuff. I'd be sad for Pittsburgh for him to leave because he's been such a good impact there.
Yeah, that's a big part of the Steelers culture, though, too, is like being a part of the community. I can't think of a Steeler that doesn't have a charity in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's actually pretty true. So Juju's off the table.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the guys that are there. Deante Johnson is good. I don't think I would have pegged
Deante Johnson has potential to be a very good wide receiver, number one. And he was shown because, 2020, he had a lot of issues with dropped passes. 2021, he really improved on that until the end of the season. And, you saw it in that postseason game against the Chiefs. Yeah. There was so many times where, Ben would throw a great first down pass and our receivers just weren't catching it. And Deante Johnson was definitely not innocent in that.
Yep.
So I think, he's still a young guy. He's got a lot of room to improve. But, just the numbers he's been putting up, the trust that Ben had in him to make plays when he needed to make them, like Deante Johnson is going to be, I think has potential to be a big staple in the league if he continues to go in the trajectory that he's going.
I agree. The only other guy that I feel that is impactful, everybody else has kind of been Chase Claypool. But he's very hot and cold in my opinion. So I wanted your Claypool.
Chase definitely kind of fell off this year from last year. I'm not like down on Chase at all. I still think he's a great receiver. I think he's got some stuff to work on, but I think this year was kind of a learning experience for him. You go back last year, he had 4 touchdowns in one game against Philadelphia. And I think this year he only had, I can't even think of how many touchdowns he had, but I mean, he had more in one game than I think he had this whole season. So, but again, he's a guy, I mean, he's a tall, fast receiver that draws coverage. So he opens up other guys.
What's your thought about the rest of the wide receiver room? I know there's James Washington.
James Washington. I love James Washington. I don't, because he was pretty upset about the limited play time he was getting this year and I guess recent years too. Because, I mean, he is a pretty solid guy. He makes contested catches pretty consistently.
Yeah.
So he's a guy I'd love to see stay in Pittsburgh, but I don't see it happening unless the Steelers are really confident that Mason Rudolph could be something, because Mason Rudolph and James Washington were together in college. It was his favorite target at Oklahoma. Like, and even in the times that, Mason Rudolph was starting that year, Ben was hurt, he was throwing it to Washington a lot. And honestly, so was Duck Hodges. Those two had a great connection too. So I'd love to see him stay to see if he can contribute to whoever comes in at, next at quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me. So that's a good breakdown of the needs that are here. I'm going to jump to cap space for 2022. Right now you're sitting at 14 mil. So we've talked about needs. Do you feel like there's one that you could address better in the off season other than the draft?
I feel like we're going to bring in a free agent quarterback. Steelers, like we were talking about beforehand, the Steelers love to have a veteran quarterback in the room. I mean, you look even just at the backups we've had over the last several. I mean, we had Charlie Batch as a backup, who used to be a starter in Detroit. We had, Bruce Grodkowski, who had been around like Oakland and Cincinnati. He was backup for a few years. We had Mike Vick as a backup for a season. The Steelers just love having a veteran presence in the quarterback room. It's always been Ben, but just somebody to kind of help the, whoever has been the second string kind of learn. Because when we had Landry Jones, he was technically the second string and Mike Vick was the third string. So Mike Vick was kind of in the room with Landry Jones, teaching him. And so I feel like we're going to bring in somebody. I know there's been a lot of talk of Aaron Rodgers is going to come to Pittsburgh. I don't see that happening. I think be more likely to be a guy like, Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota, somebody that they'll get a little cheaper. That has potential, but is also somebody who will just make, like Haskins or Rudolph, or if they would draft somebody, make them play up a little more to the competition.
Right. I guess on my wish list for the Steelers with their cap space, if you don't get a quarterback, go for a top end corner, because I think that'll help you a lot more in zone. Because Watt's great, but Watt primarily a pass rusher.
I also honestly wouldn't mind them picking up a free agent receiver.
Yeah. Yep. That too. Just
on the off chance that Juju is gone and we lose Washington. I mean, we'll probably draft a late round receiver. Steelers are really good at doing that for some reason. Look, just they've been kind of a receiver factory over the last decade.
Uh-huh.
So I'm never too worried about Steelers receivers, but I think it is good to have sort of a veteran in the room, which is, again, just something the Steelers like to do at most positions.
Yeah. Let's run through your draft picks from 21. Just give me a brief feeling of how you are with them. Their first round pick, number 24, was pretty obvious. Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama. If your feeling is anything other than good, I'll kick you off.
Najee was phenomenal. And I think if you're not, an AFC North fan or like a Steelers fan who watches it pretty consistently, it was pretty easy to miss how phenomenal of a season Najee actually had behind really the worst offensive line in the league too. I mean, he was fourth in the league in rushing. He had 1,200 rushing yards, which was a Steelers rookie record. He beat out Franco Harris, who set the record in 1972. He had what was it, 308 touches without a fumble, which is the second most in league history behind Gerald Riggs from the Falcons. He had, I think, 400. I think he had 430. But just in week 18 alone against Baltimore, when we entered that game, Najee was 6th on that list. He exited the game 2nd on that list. So just during that game, he passed Ray Rice, who had 370. These are in my notes. I don't have this memorized. Don't worry.
No, that's good.
I'm not that crazy. He beat out Le'Veon Bell, who had 373 touches without a fumble. And he beat out the previous tie for second place, LaDainian Tomlinson and Barry Sanders, who had 375.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're up with big dog.
And then on top of that,
okay.
he also had, 74 receptions for almost 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, and that was all behind the worst offensive line in the league. So, if the Steelers really invest and improve their offensive line over the next couple of years, Najee is going to be incredible. And I'm so excited for that.
Yep. I knew,
because we had, go ahead.
I'm biased. I knew Najee was going to be good. I didn't know Najee was going to be that good. I was like, oh, mama, okay.
I was, and he got into the Pro Bowl, but only because Joe Mixon was going to the Super Bowl. He just should have been voted in. It shouldn't have had to been he had to get, let in by somebody going to the Super Bowl. He had a Pro Bowl year, but like I said, because the Steelers offense was so shaky all year, it was easy to miss how great of a season he had for his first year.
I feel like you're going to be equally as excited about the second guy because I was. In round 2, pick 55, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end out of Penn State. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He very quickly became one of Big Ben's favorite targets. He plays a lot like Heath Miller used to in Pittsburgh. And for several years after Heath Miller retired, because it was a big thing whenever Heath would catch the ball that the entire stadium would yell Heath. And you could even hear it on the TV broadcasts. And even after he retired, when we had Jesse James and Vance McDonald or whoever else, people were still yelling Heath when they would catch the ball.
Yeah.
And it switched this year once Pat Freiermuth started to really take off and, make a name for himself. People are yelling Muth now.
Yeah. That's how big he was.
Yeah. He very quickly became a favorite target of Ben's and just a fan favorite in Pittsburgh. So I'm super excited about him, and he's a Penn State guy. So I'm from Central Pennsylvania. So yeah.
Round 3, pick 87. You took Kendrick Green. He was guard out of Illinois. We've kind of talked about him.
He was hit or miss. I don't know if he's the answer at center, but I think he's going to be a good O lineman. We'll see how his training with Pouncey goes. You can't get much of a better mentor than a guy who was in the Pro Bowl every year of his career, except I think the one that he got injured. So, we'll see where Kendrick goes.
Agreed. But for a round 3 pick to be starting and be semi-impactful, that's not bad. Round 4, pick 128, you took Dan Moore Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas A&M. I don't know. I feel like I didn't see enough to grade.
Yeah, he didn't have the best season. He definitely showed improvement during this, throughout the season. I think he ended up starting a lot more than he was expected to. So we'll see how he improves going forward and what he does in the offseason. But it was again just a young guy who was immediately put into, having to take full action. So we'll see. I'm not I'm kind of just medium on him.
Yeah. Do you think his ceiling is better than his floor, or?
Yeah, I think he's got a ceiling, but it's at this point, it's honestly just remains to be seen for me.
Fair enough. Round 4, pick 140. You took Buddy Johnson, the linebacker of Texas A&M.
Yeah, he didn't really see much action this year. I think he had a couple of tackles in December, but he honestly didn't really play a whole lot.
The only other sexy pick that I thought the Steelers had was round 5, pick 156, Isaiah Loudermilk, the D tackle out of Wisconsin. When they picked him, I was excited, but I didn't see enough.
Yeah, I mean, well, he didn't play a whole lot.
No.
He definitely showed promise. I think he had 23 tackles total, 16 solo. He had 1 sack against Cleveland.
Yeah.
But I think he's just a young guy. I think as he gets older, gets into the system more, I think he's going to see a lot more playing time and take off. It was just kind of rookie year, didn't get a whole lot of chances on the defense.
Yeah, but he is a massive guy. If he pans out, you got a big old dude at
the
position.
I mean, when he got drafted, when he and Kendrick Green both got drafted, people were just joking that they looked like mini versions of Cam Hayward and Marquise Pouncey.
Yeah,
like if you look at Loudermilk and Cam Hayward right next to each other, he looks like he could be Cam's little brother.
Yeah,
which Cam's little brother coming up in the draft this year.
Oh, that's right.
So
the round pick was pick 216, Quincy Roche, the linebacker out of Miami. I didn't do research on this one, so this is all you.
He ended up playing for the Giants. He didn't really work out in Pittsburgh.
Makes sense.
I don't even know that he was on. I don't even know that he was on our team in the regular season at all. Honestly, I can't remember when we got rid of him. He might have been a training camp cut.
That feels like a common problem for 6th and 7th round picks. That's why I don't put a lot of stock into them. So round 7, pick 245, Trey Norwood, cornerback out of Oklahoma. That one's up to you. I didn't really.
He was pretty solid towards the end of the season. Definitely showed some promise. 38 tackles, 32 solo, and the big thing that people are going to remember from this year is that he's the one that got the interception at the end of the Week 17 game that let Ben Roethlisberger go out and take the victory formation for his last home game.
Oh, that was Trey Norwood?
Okay. Yeah, Trey Norwood got that interception.
That's cool.
So he, basically just handed the ball back to Ben and was like, take your knee, bro.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I love those kind of moments. And I knew he had that, but I didn't know who intercepted the ball.
Yeah, it was Norwood.
I should have done my research on that one. That's my bad. But I knew you were going to, so
I didn't even have to research that one, man. I just remember that.
Right. Usually we do like coach hot seat, and I made a quick difference. So this is a coach and QB hot seat. We kind of already talked about who could replace Ben. Do you have a preference for who you would like? If you had a wish list, who would you like to come in?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm excited to see the competition. Because there's really no one that I'm like, yeah, I want this guy to be our starter next year. Like, it'd be cool to, because I would love to see somebody that comes in kind of under the radar, somebody that doesn't really have people don't have a high ceiling for, just come in and take the role. I was a big fan when we picked up Haskins for the amount of money that we got him for. Bringing in a former first-round pick for basically nothing. I think, working with Tomlin really likes him. I think if they can bring something out of him, that would be awesome to see. But, I'd love for Mason Rudolph to shut everybody up. That'd be awesome. Or, cool. Whoever they bring in free agency. Or I'm just excited to it's scary as a guy who's been watching Ben Roethlisberger for 18 years and has never, hasn't seen the Steelers have a losing season in 18 years.
Yeah.
But I'm also, it's an exciting time just to see what happens and see how it plays out. That's honestly there's so much speculation on what's going to happen over the next few months. Yes. And it's nobody knows. And I just want to watch it. It's going to be fun.
I would argue that when you have a season where you tie with the Detroit Lions, that's a losing season. But that's fine.
We had whatever. Rudolph was starting.
Sorry. I had to. I know we lost. Listen, I know what you're.
Wait, hang on. Yeah, I was going to say, didn't they beat Baltimore?
No, we beat them with that 63-yard field goal from Tucker.
Who did they beat? Who was their first win?
Probably the Vikings or something dumb.
That might have
actually been the Vikings. I don't know. Who cares?
It might have been. I remembered purple.
So it's probably the Vikings. So you did a wonderful job, and I added some stuff that I had, but I figured I wanted to just kind of feature what you had. We talked about it. This is some of the stuff that they could take this upcoming year. We always do a short list. So Kenny Pickett has been talked about forever. Personally,
I mean, he's a Pitt guy. He's been in the facility. The Steelers know him. Plays well. I just don't. He's one of those guys. Like, is he going to be available at 20? If he is, maybe you take him. A lot of people were pulling for him early. That's kind of died down at this point. But I mean, if he's available, you got to think about it. You know.
Yeah, that's how I feel with Sam Howell. Sam Howell really came on late in the season.
After having he's one beginning. I don't know as much about. I just know people have been talking about him come up in the draft.
He'll remind you of Ben.
I mean, this is kind of where you and I differ. Is where I'm really not as much of a college football guy as you are.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, I kind of like when I know that the Steelers have a need in the draft, I'll kind of like look at the top prospects, but like I don't know as much about following their careers in college.
That's okay. Sam Howell was really good up until this season. So I'll tell you how UNC finished. They went 6-6. Which is not what you're looking for when you're looking for your next generational quarterback. And the problem is he'll remind people of Ben. He's big body, big frame. He's got good IQ, but he's just too boom or bust. He tries to put it into like tight windows, and it's an interception. He tries to extend the play and does something dumb, interception. But he's very big bodied. He's very strong. He was not much of a rusher until this year, and I think I had it written somewhere. He went for like 900-something yards rushing this year. Like that's big. Like if you can do that and pass,
and that's a big focus of the Steelers this year. Is Tomlin wants a mobile quarterback. I mean, you had it with Ben early in his career, like we were talking about. Like if you go back to like watch the first 10 years of Ben's career, he's running around like Russell Wilson or whoever, extending plays, using his legs.
Yeah,
that fell off a lot in his later years. But that's kind of the modern age of football is quarterbacks who are multi-talented and can make plays with their legs if they need to. So that's Tomlin has basically flat out said that he wants a mobile quarterback moving forward. So, I mean, if that's something Sam Howell brings to the table, that's definitely something that the Steelers are going to take into consideration.
And that'll bring us to Malik Willis, because the guy that does what Sam Howell does better is Malik Willis. And I like how you put them like in order when you texted me this, because I was like, oh, this is perfect, because Kenny Pickett is that very in the pocket quarterback, more of a passer first. Howell is kind of both. And Malik Willis is one of those lovely little option quarterbacks that can sling it. So
Malik Willis really came into the conversation around the Senior Bowl. Because, I mean, obviously all of the Steelers management was out at the Senior Bowl. Tomlin was there with Matt Canada, Kevin Colbert, and they were all, there's pictures of them talking to Malik Willis all weekend, talking to Malik Willis's family. Tomlin was really following around Malik Willis those couple of days. So I think if it gets to round 20 and or pick 20 and he's still on the board, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes to Pittsburgh.
I'd do it. I like Malik Willis out of the three of them best. Because one of the things you talk about, because you and I both know this is a quarterback league first, more than anything else. And Malik Willis has such a nice zip to his throws. Like he doesn't have to force it. Like he just has a natural arm. And it doesn't surprise me that Pittsburgh's calling and talking to him, because they should be. He's actually I haven't had time to write this yet, but he's my QB1 going into this draft. So I hope other teams are dumb and take the Picketts and take Matt Corral and reach and wait and get Willis late. If not, maybe this is one of those weird drafts where the Steelers trade up if they really love him.
The Steelers I think they've only traded up twice. Yep. One was to get, or maybe I forget what the stat is exactly. Maybe Colbert has only ever traded up once. I don't remember exactly, but the last two times they've traded up were for Devin Bush, who we'll see how that plays out. His rookie year was great. So it paid off, but obviously the injury, and then this third year he was kind of wishy-washy. And the other time that they've traded up was for Troy Polamalu. So that one went pretty well too.
So I guess we'll see, but you and I both agree they need a signal caller and badly. O-line, I loved your picks here. I had similar picks, so I just left what was there. Zion Johnson is obviously your go-to if you decide you don't want a quarterback in round one. He has that prototypical size, good motion in the pocket, just keeps plays alive. Kenyon Green, also big guy. Sean Ryan's okay. I felt that UCLA was kind of meh, but to be in the Pac-12 and keep your quarterback upright, that's still pretty good because the Pac-12 is better on defense than anything else anyways.
Yeah, and these aren't like, I wasn't saying like first round picks or second round picks for all these.
No,
I'm just saying like guys that if they're available when you get to them, they might be good fits.
Oh, yeah. Bernhard Raymond, another guy that kind of came on in the Senior Bowl. And it made me laugh because if I remember correctly, the last time you took someone from Central Michigan would be Antonio Brown, correct?
Yeah, it was AB.
So, whether you admit it or not, you do have a good history with Central Michigan.
So and that team, I think it was AB's freshman year there, maybe. AB and JJ Watt were both on offense, I think, of that team.
Weird. That's strange.
Because it was before JJ went to Wisconsin.
That's super weird. Rasheed Walker is also another really good guy. I wasn't shocked to see that in your list. I had him there too. Obviously, if it's a Penn State guy, if they have a chance to go for him, they will because they get to see him a lot being in the state. Did you find it? Was he actually at Central Michigan?
Yeah. In 2007, Antonio Brown and JJ Watt were on the same offense.
That's so weird. Let's go to corners. We've talked about it. Josh Jobe, thank you for picking one of my favorite cornerbacks of the past couple of years.
I like him, but I also threw it on for you.
Yeah, I figured. Josh Jobe is good. He needs to improve in his man coverage, but in zone, he is basically a lock. Darion Kendrick is really good out of Georgia. They won the title for a reason because their defense is incredible. If you have a chance, I would take anyone from that defense and be fine. Alontae Taylor struggled a little bit this year, but in general, he has a good NFL body size, that type of prospect.
Yeah, I was thinking if he's available in a later round, could be someone you can pick and develop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I loved all three of these picks. Obviously, if you take a corner or any defense out of the SEC, it's good for you. And then the rest, and this is where I kind of did fudge around a couple things a little bit. Kway Walker, obviously, played in the Senior Bowl, improved his stock quite a bit, but I don't think he'll be a day one or day two kind of player. Again, somebody you can pick up and develop. Damon Clark is kind of the same way out of LSU. Boye Mafe, I don't know if you've looked him up at all, out of Minnesota. He's terrifying. And it's one of those, like, it reminds me of Mean Joe Green. It's kind of what he reminds me of, like that big guy that just gets in the back and disrupts the whole play. And you need that. You do, because Hayward isn't getting any younger.
I mean, Hayward still, I mean, he made all pro this year. He did. I think last year he got it was the largest contract for a defensive player over the age of 30, and he earned it this year.
Oh God!
I mean, he is continually a staple in that defense.
He is still Cam Hayward, so it doesn't shock me. Danny Gray, that's a good one. The guy or the S.
Yeah. See, my thing with Danny Gray, I think that's one that you'd probably take in a late round again. But like he didn't have a lot of action, but I mean he was averaging 15 yards per catch, and like almost 16% of his receptions were touchdowns. So he's a great red zone target.
Yep. I also put one on here. I don't know how you feel about Trey Lance. I'm on the fence about Trey Lance. I didn't really like the pick, but he was productive in college, and his number one target, Christian Watson, is now coming around to the draft. I watched him a little bit in the Senior Bowl. He's got sticky hands. Like just about everything you throw to him, he'll come away with, and that's almost what the Steelers need. And you talked about it earlier. They have such a problem with drops that I was like, oh, Christian Watson would be somebody you can take late, develop him, and maybe he is that like AB. You take him late, and he's just a stud. So a risk for sure, but I think a calculated one would be good for the Steelers. So I'm so sorry. This is like way past the time I told you this was going to be done. But we can
whatever.
zoom through these other teams because I don't care about them, and I don't think you do either. So let's go to the New England Patriots. I'll be quick here. It's pretty obvious. Most of the stuff they need is on defense, except for a couple tweaks on offense. Isaiah Wynn is he just needs to be moved. He needs to be moved. He is not doing it there. Trent Brown is getting older, only played 2 games this year. They will need a tackle, but I don't think the tackle is like a dying need. You're going to need one. Like the line wasn't great, but did enough for your quarterback this year. Cornerbacks, yeah, Stephon Gilmore is not there anymore, which exposed the fact that you don't have any other corners. Linebackers, defensive end, Dietrich Wise had 3 sacks, probably more of a role player. Lawrence Guy is 31. So not exactly a guy you're going to want to extend for a long time and say, ooh, he's going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Safety, Devin McCourty is ancient. Yeah.
I had to I saw that in your notes. I had to look that up. I was like, wait, is he still there?
Yeah.
Still around.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
So obviously the first couple parts of this are defense, O-line, running back. Now, most people disagree with this, but there's enough talking in the Patriots circles that I agree with where they are with this. The big problem is you traded Sony Michel. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
James White is still viable, but not explosive. Damian Harris is great and solid, but he gets hurt really often. We know they like their running backs. They'll always take a running back. Ramondre Stevenson was okay, probably needed to see more. They need a third down back, though. All of those guys are more speed guys. They don't have like that big guy that just powers you in for a first down. So I think if you're going to be looking around, try to find something late, but you don't need it to be like in your first 4 rounds. And then the obvious one. Oh, my gosh. They do not have a receiver for the first time in years. Nelson Aguilar. Kendrick Bourne. No. They have the ability, but neither of them are number 1 targets. They aren't consistent enough for Matt
and that I think is where the talk of potentially bringing in Juju is coming from.
And it makes sense.
Yeah. Which like I said, I'll always be a fan of Juju, but if he goes to New England, you know how Steelers fans feel about New England.
After James Harrison, yeah, I would think so.
Oh no, just in general, like Tom Brady probably at least stole a Super Bowl. Not stole, but kept us from getting at least one more.
Deflated, sorry. Cap space for 2022. You have $30 million. You can play. You can play this offseason.
They got some room to.
So this is an interesting thing. It'll take like 2 seconds to talk about. The Packers are kind of playing like, did the chicken come before the egg with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, because Adams is waiting to see what Rodgers does and Rodgers is waiting to see what Adams does. So at some point, somebody's got to say something. But if they don't, maybe they tag Adams and trade him and try to get some good value.
Rodgers has come out and said that he's going to make a decision before free agency. So it's kind of a wait and see at this point.
Yeah, which is
because I know he doesn't want to screw over Green Bay, but at the same time, he's got to do his thing, figure out what he wants to do.
Doesn't want to screw over Green Bay. Didn't sound like that earlier in the season, but whatever. Let's talk about their draft picks from 2021. I know you're informed. You can be in this. Round 1, they took Mac Jones, a steal. I'm biased, but I thought it was a steal.
I mean,
he had a really good
he had a great season. I mean, especially for coming in early in the season when he wasn't expected to be the starter. But, Cam Newton was there and obviously didn't play the way he expected. And Mac Jones came in and just took over and, really earned the job there.
He did.
I was impressed by him.
And I made comments last year, and I'm so proud of myself. I told them, watch Mac Jones be the best quarterback out of that class. And after 1 year, he's got a good case. Granted, we did say I think he benefited from where he was drafted, but still, numbers don't. So, in round 2, they took Christian Barmore, the D tackle out of Alabama. He was pretty effective. As a rookie.
Yeah, he was solid for them.
The Belichick to Saban connection continues. Ronnie Perkins was okay. Was all right. Didn't kill it, but was okay. Their round 4 pick, Ramondre Stevenson. That was probably their like typical Patriots late pick that just turns into something better than what they were drafted at. And he played really well when he got in there.
Yeah, I think he had a little somewhere around 600 or 700 yards rushing on the ground. 100 some touches.
I picked him up in fantasy because I was like, well, here go the Patriots with their running backs again.
Yeah.
Let me see. I got to look at the stats for him. I think McGrone was hurt, right? I think McGrone was on the non-football injury list for a while.
I don't know. I don't know anything about McGrone. I'll be honest. Let me pull him up here.
I got to find it. Well, this is all old news. I don't want the old news. Oh, okay. You know what? I think it was his ACL. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he was hurt coming up. Okay, here we go. He was hurt, but then he ended up playing. But it wasn't anything great, so never mind. That's probably a meh pick for the Patriots. Let's go.
Well, it's injury, so you'll see how he goes moving forward.
Right. At least for just being active.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on his stats. It just says no information available.
I don't think anything is really going to come out of that yet. Clicking on stats again. I don't see anything for Joshua Bledsoe either. So this is I don't really research down all the way down because most of these guys don't do anything year one. They don't play.
A lot of them are late round.
Yeah, Will Sherman out of Colorado. Well, I know the only thing they were really excited about was Trey Nixon in round 7, the wide receiver out of UCF. But again, he didn't really do anything either. So this is why I just skip this most of the time. But it's whatever. It is what it is. It's the Patriots. I don't really care. I don't like the Patriots. I don't think anyone really does, for the most part.
Unless you're a Patriots fan,
we don't.
Everybody's just sick of them. Even though Tom's gone, it's just And
it seems they got their new franchise quarterback, so it's not like they're going to die off for a long time. So just a couple of quick names. You might know some of these. If not, it's all good. I'm going to run through them anyways. Daniel Fellaille is the offensive tackle at Minnesota. I would take him if he's there. He's pretty effective. I'm trying to remember his stats off the top of my head because I just wrote them the other day.
Yeah.
Sorry, I need to just see his Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. He is 6'9" and 379 pounds.
That is a big man.
That's a monster. Yeah. I also think they could benefit because they're always going to pick less sexy picks anyways. Chad Muma, the linebacker to Wyoming, had a pretty good year in college this past year. Not a guy that's going to be called on day one, but that's okay. They like doing that anyways. Trevor Penning, the guy out of University of Northern Iowa. If you don't know that university, that is okay. It is itty bitty. But Trevor Penning has had an incredible year. And again, like you said, guys get into the Senior Bowl and prove their draft stock by doing stuff to the big guys that you don't expect. Trevor Penning was one of those guys. Barely ever let the pocket collapse when he was in there. Wouldn't be surprised to see him gone day one or day two. Skye Moore, the receiver out of Western Michigan, just screams Patriots to me. He is 5'10", 195 pounds, quick guy, has a really good catch radius, and seems to really take advantage of being open in open space, which really defines what they need. They have good receivers. They just don't have anybody that's like a do-it-all. And Skye Moore can be that at a really cheap cost. I know you probably know this. Most cornerbacks that are going to come out of Washington are going to be pretty decent. Kyler Gordon has moved up more and more to being like first round, maybe early second round conversation. I think they could get him on cheap, maybe even third round. It just depends on what they go for. Kyler Gordon is pretty decent. I know he's not the number one guy to come out of Washington this year. That would probably go to Trent McDuffie, but Kyler Gordon is still good. And then the last guy that I have on this list is Devonta Price, the guy out of Florida International. He is 6'2", 216 pounds. Speaking of that third down kind of back, that would kind of qualify for that because everyone they've got is like 5'10", 5'9", 5'11", like itty-bitty little guys. Get that like fullback kind of style running back, and they may do a lot better. But just thinking of like a big-bodied guy like that, I was like, you could probably take him in the 7th round and get away with it, and he does something because you're the Patriots. So that'll wrap up the Pats. Let's swing through and do the Saints. The only really interesting thing about the Saints this year, quarterback. Ian Book.
Yeah, very interested. Yeah. I'm curious to see what they do. I mean, obviously they drafted Ian Book last year, but you know,
I just haven't seen enough for me to.
I think they're kind of in a similar situation to Pittsburgh, where it's really tough to say. It's just going to be they're probably going to bring somebody in, have some competition at the position, and it's really kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah. So outside of quarterback, let's go wide receiver. Look, Michael Thomas. I don't know what's happening with Michael Thomas, but if he ever suits up for the Saints again, I'll be incredibly shocked. Because he's all they had. They don't have any other good receiver. I don't. Yeah. And that's not going to help whoever your quarterback is if you don't address the two biggest positions in football, quarterback and receiver. So the Saints are in a really tough spot.
What's their cap space like?
I
know that's skipping ahead a little bit. I'm just curious.
So glad you asked. Negative $66 million.
Oh, okay. So they can't play around too much.
Nope. Because they overpaid. Shoot, I can't think of his name. Why can't I think of his name? It's Taysom Hill. They overpaid Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
And it's like Sean Payton was just like, oh, I'm gonna play Bounty Gate one more time and like really pay Taysom Hill. Like, did he blackmail you? Do you owe him money? Like, what happened that you just paid him that much money and was like, yeah, that's good, that works.
Yeah.
That was incredibly stupid. So yeah, they're negative 66 in the hole this offseason, which if you cut the whole roster and just drafted the whole roster, you should be okay. So that's why I said Michael Thomas, even if he doesn't come back, dish him soon because he's a big chunk of it.
There's going to be some restructures in New Orleans over the next couple of months.
They're going to have to. Their D tackles, David Onyemata and Shai Tuttle, are just not it. They need a stud in there to help Cam Jordan. Speaking of Cam Jordan, he is the entire lifeblood of that defense. He'll still produce, but his career is probably going to be over soon, especially with people being gone. Let's talk about tight end. Adam Troutman was okay, but not like sexy. I really think they're going to need somebody to be in tandem with Troutman. Safety, Marcus Williams will probably be gone in free agency. Malcolm Jenkins is very old. We know that. He's been around for too long. They're going to need an upgrade there. And then the last question for them, running back. Kamara's in trouble.
Yeah.
And Mark Ingram is your next guy up, and he's old. He may not be the answer for you, which means you don't have anything there, and you can't go get a free agent. So, ouch. that being said, we already talked cap space. Let's go ahead and talk last year's guys. Peyton Turner was their first pick out of Houston, defensive end.
He got injured pretty early in the season, didn't he? Early November, I think.
Yeah,
but I think he was playing well.
Yeah, like at least he got a sack. There's some guys that go through their whole rookie season and never get one.
Yeah, no, I think he was playing pretty decent for a rookie, like with the time that he was given. But yeah, that injury really set him back, obviously.
Well, I'm confused. I'm Jocks of all trades. Who is this? Kyle, is this you?
What?
Jocks of all trades commented on Jocks of all trades video, so I was trying to figure out who in the world that was. I was very confused. Pete Werner was their second round pick. The linebacker out of Ohio State. Why is
he was pretty solid.
Yeah, he was pretty good. I'd say for a second round pick, that's kind of what you're looking for. Let's go to Paulson Adebo, which I'm probably murdering your last name, sir. I'm sorry.
I think I know a little bit about him. I have a friend who's a Saints fan, so I talked to him a little bit.
Okay.
He was pretty good on Paulson. He had a couple interceptions this year, had like 60-some tackles.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially for a third rounder.
For a third round pick, like, what more do you want?
Yeah.
He's contributing.
Yeah. He may not be like the answer, but he's not bad. Let's talk about their fourth round pick, Ian Book. I feel like they picked Ian Book because he reminded some people of like a really terrible version of Drew Brees. And anything that's near Drew Brees, they're going to get excited about. He played one game, if I remember correctly, against the Dolphins. He had a 60% completion percentage, threw for 135 yards and 2 picks. Ouch.
Yeah.
Not good against a defense that didn't look good this year.
Yeah. And I don't know. A lot of times in situations like that, I tend to give a little. Obviously, he's a professional football player. He should be playing to a high standard. But when you're not used to getting first team reps, you're not as comfortable in the offense, even though you study it, you work with the second team or special teams or whatever throughout the week. But it's just a totally different animal when you're getting your first start in the league. Again, it's one of those things I'd like to see what he does when he's got a chance to compete for a job. So we'll see how it plays out in the offseason.
Yeah, it's just not like – I don't think it was what they expected with a fourth round pick.
No, I don't think he's the answer, but, he'll at least get a shot this year.
Yeah. The next guy was Landon Young, the offensive tackle out of Kentucky. He started in one game, and I think he played in 10 games, and didn't see much out of him at all, if anything. Yeah. And then Kawan Baker, I don't remember hearing about at all this year.
I think from my understanding, he played in 2 games. But yeah, that's about the extent.
Yeah.
At least
sounds like it because I can't find anything. So, which is sad because South Alabama is getting pretty good about churning out some decent prospects at the receiver position because Jalen Tolbert will be this year. But just
all right. So he had two games. He had 1 combined tackle and 1 solo tackle. So 7th round guy. Whatever.
That's bad because he's a receiver. So. That's even worse.
So yeah, special teams.
Great. So then let's chat about one more thing here. Dennis Allen, was that really the coach that they went with? And better yet, can Dennis Allen and Winston even lead the Saints? I know the answer is pretty quickly probably no. Because I'd be hard pressed to think that Winston is even going to be there next year.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, with all the talk of where Jameis Winston might end up this year, like it's not likely he'll end up back in New Orleans, I don't think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. With so many questions, let's go ahead and have a look at some last things here. If you want that like Drew Brees kind of prospect, Matt Corral strikes me as that. Um, I think he's good, but his big game ability, he struggled a little bit. So we'll see what happens. I like him. Um, let's go on. Haskell Garrett, the D tackle from Ohio State. Big bodied guy, creates space for other guys to get inside. I don't think he will really be like the successor to like Cam Jordan, but he'll be good. Then two interesting pieces. They're not top receivers in this draft, but probably somebody they could get at like a cheap deal. Alec Pierce was the wide receiver for Cincinnati. He was pretty good. I mean, he played for a team that went 13-1, so I mean that's pretty decent. And he did have Desmond Ridder. He did kind of have an established quarterback, and I know without that being a question, maybe his production changes. John Metchi, another good wide receiver. I only put him on there. Yeah, I'm biased, but I only put him on there because they can probably get him cheap. He did get hurt, but he was productive. He was very productive with Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Which means if you put him in the right system, he can do the stuff for you. Kirby Joseph plays for Illinois. Illinois is not a sexy team, but he's a good player. He's a great athlete. A little rough around the edges. They're going to have to shape him to be better dealing with the NFL. And then the last guy on this list, Jalen Weidermeyer, the tight end out of A&M. I like him. I think he's really good. He could make a case for probably the best tight end in this draft, but probably would share that with Isaiah Likely, the guy out of Coastal Carolina, and Trey McBride, the guy out of Colorado State. But Weidermeyer deserves to be in there, and if you can't get one of the other two guys, then he'll probably be there for cheap in the late rounds, which at this point would be a great steal for the Saints, who have nothing to work with. I would not be shocked to see them trade back and get more picks because they're struggling mightily. So all that aside, thank you for joining our episode of the Steelers podcast. I'm kidding.
Oh
yeah. Thanks for coming for Sideline GMs.
That's where my expertise is. We start talking about the Patriots. Okay. I'm just like, you want me to talk about the Patriots? I'm going to start using some language,
which I halfway expected, which is okay. But thank you so much for bailing me out and hanging out with me.
Yeah, sure thing, man.
You can talk about the Steelers for hours.
I'll ramble on forever.
Good. But thanks for being here with us, guys. We will see you next Wednesday. And I don't remember the teams we're going to do, so stay tuned.